All right, you guys, so we're going to start on this 4-3. It's about congruent triangles. Now, this is pretty simple today, but there's some stuff about this that I really need you to pay attention to, because the way you fill out your interactive worksheet for this makes a difference, okay? So the math, real basic. But the interactive worksheet, so that I didn't have to put in 4,000 different possible answers, I need you to put it in a specific way. All right? Now, these two diagrams, notice how they have these hash marks? These hash marks are telling you that these different things are congruent. And what we know is, if you have two triangles and all of their parts are congruent to each other, then those two triangles are congruent to each other. Now that just makes common sense, right? But it's an actual theorem. So it's called CPC. Let me get this up where I can write all the way through. TC. CPCTC. And this stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. CPCTC. Okay? Now that, like I said, that just seems like basic common sense. But whenever, we're going to do some proofs tomorrow, we have to have some reasons. And this is a reason. CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That just means the parts that are in the same locations on two triangles that are congruent. Okay? And that works vice versa. The converse of that also works. So if you know that the triangles are congruent, then you know their parts are congruent. If you know the parts are congruent, then you know the triangles are congruent. Y'all with me? Okay. So if we go back to this problem right here, what they want us to do is list all the congruent parts, then write a triangle congruent statement. Now that doesn't mean you have to write it out in words. I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? So we're going to start with this one and say, some piece of this one is congruent to some piece of that one. So let's name a segment on this one right here. Name one segment. Okay, L is not a segment, that's an angle. LP. So LP, now I want to point something out to y'all. We could call this LP or we could call it PL, right? And either way is accurate. Neither way is wrong. But for your worksheet, so that I didn't have to type in all those different possible options, I want you to do it alphabetically for the first one. So you will do like LP, segment LP is congruent to. Then when we write the segment from this other one, we don't worry about if it's in alphabetical order. We worry about which angle matches up to it. So which angle from this triangle matches up to L over here? Which angle is the same? S, right? So you put S first because S matches to L. And then what angle is congruent to P in this triangle over here? V. So you put V second. See, now it is alphabetical, but that's just a coincidence. Okay? Y'all see what I'm saying? Okay. So then let's name another segment in this one here. We got LP. What's another one? Another segment, another side. JP. Now, once again, it could be PJ, right? But we're going to call it JP because we're going to put it in alphabetical order. And then so it's congruent to what segment over here? TV. Now, why do we say the T first? Because it's congruent to J, right? And then we put the V second because it's congruent to P. So you put them with the ones they match up with, the ones they're corresponding with. All right? Then what's our last segment on this side? JL. And then what's it congruent to? TS. T matches up with J. S matches up with L. Right? Now we're going to put our angles. What angles are congruent? So we just name an angle from this one. So like angle J is congruent to what? Angle T. And then like angle L is congruent to what? Angle S. And then angle P is congruent to what? Angle V. Okay? So y'all see how that works? Now, all we have to do for this one, the last part, is to write our triangle congruence statement. See this? Congruence statement. That doesn't mean we have to write it out in words. We're going to use symbols to say that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. So we're going to name this triangle. Now, when you name a triangle, you just use the 3 vertices. And you just write them down. And it doesn't matter what order you put them in. But for this worksheet, once again, I want you to do them alphabetically, okay? So we're going to say triangle. What's our alphabetical order of those 3? Of these 3? JLP. Thanks, Johnny. Triangle JLP is congruent to triangle. Now, we're not worrying about alphabetical order for this side. We want to match up the angles that are congruent to the angles that are congruent over here. So what angle is congruent to J in this triangle here? So we put T. And then what angle is congruent to L? S. And then what angle is congruent to P? B. So see, now it did wind up being alphabetical because that's just the way they have the problem laid out, but it didn't necessarily have to be. Y'all see what I'm saying? We match up the angles from this one with the angles in that one. Okay? And that's it. We're done with number 1. Now, number 2, huh? I mean, really though, was it? I mean, really? It was a lot of writing, but it wasn't like it was hard or anything. Huh? Oh, please. Please. Okay. So number 2 is a little different. Same thing. We're doing the exact same thing. So we're going to list the sides that are congruent and the angles that are congruent. So we're going to do the sides first. All right. So always start with the ones that are first in the alphabet. Okay. So D, E, and F, or like E is before G. So we'll start with the one that has the E in it. Okay. So name a side in this triangle. Name one side. A side is 2 in this top triangle. DE. Segment DE is going to be congruent to segment. And then down here, when we name it, we're going to name it in the same way. So if we did DE here, down here we're going to do DG. Do y'all see what I'm saying? Because D is congruent here and here. E is congruent to G here. Y'all following me? Okay, name another one up here in the top. EF. Okay, so we could totally call it FE. Totally could. But for this worksheet, if you do that, I got to go back and hand grade them. Please don't do that to me. Don't do that to me, okay? Put them alphabetical so that I don't have to go in and hand grade all of them. It's a lot to hand grade. That's 7 different answers that I would have to check for one problem. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Okay, so EF is congruent to what? You would do GF. Why would you do the G first? It's congruent to the E. Y'all see how that works? Okay. What's the other one? Because triangles have 3 sides. DF. And then what's it congruent to? DF. Do you remember us talking about this? That sometimes you have to say a segment's congruent to itself if it's used in 2 different places? Okay, so we did discuss this earlier this year. This segment DF is used in both triangles. So if we're proving something, which we're going to do tomorrow, you have to write that it's congruent to itself. And the property of this is called the reflexive property. Just so y'all know what that is when we get to it tomorrow, is we would say, oh, DF is congruent to DF. That's the reflexive property. Okay? All right, what about our angles? Now, let's start with the easy one, E. Angle E is congruent to what angle? Angle G. All right? Then what do we got? Okay, so here's the deal, Pickles. We can't call this angle D and this angle D also. They're both at D, right? That's their vertex, both of them. But they are congruent, but they are not the same angle. We can't call them the same name. Y'all see what I'm saying? So we're going to have to use our 3-letter version of naming angles for these two angles right here. So if we're going to name this angle right here, once again, let's do it alphabetically, but these got to be in the middle, right? So we would say EDF, right? Angle EDF. And it's going to be congruent. And then we're going to name this one. Now, this one we're not going to worry about if it's alphabetical or not. We're going to line it up the same way this one's lined up. So E and G are corresponding. We're going to put the G there. Oh, I forgot my angle symbol. My bad. G. D has to be in the middle because D is the vertex. F. Y'all see how that works? All right, so then we got the same situation going on over here on this side. So we'll do angle DFE because D is first in the alphabet, right? DFE is congruent to angle DFG. Y'all see how simple that is? And then all that's left is to do our triangle congruent statement. So we'll say triangle. Let's name this triangle. What are we going to name it? That guy. DEF. Good. Triangle DEF is congruent to triangle DGF. Because remember, the D is congruent to the D, the E is congruent to the G, the F's congruent to the F. So you have to put them in that order. Okay? That's not bad, huh? It's not bad at all. Okay, so now we're going to take our this concept of knowing that these triangles are congruent, and we're going to do a little math with it. So this problem right here, they're asking you to find X and Y. So I'm not going to worry about looking at that because we know that we're finding X and Y, and I'm just going to pull up a piece of paper so that I have enough room to write here. So they're asking us to find X and Y, and they told us that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle FDE. That means A is congruent to F because A and F are in the same location, right? B is congruent to D. So B is congruent to D, right? And then C is congruent to E. So C is congruent to E because they're in the same location. Okay? Now, tell me what you know based on that information.
E is 108 degrees because C is 109.
That's correct. E is 108 because C is 108, and they are congruent to each other. Angle C is congruent to angle E. What else do we know?
D's 48 because D's 48.
D's 48, which means, what do we know about Y? Y is 48 degrees. So that's our answer for 4 right there. 48. Right? Okay. Now, I think we may have to do some math to figure out X. Tell me what you know. Okay, what? We know Y is 48, don't we? So we can put that 48 in where that Y is. So that changes that to 2x minus 48. Right? Okay, what else do we know? We know that A and F are the same, but we don't know A, so that's not doing us a whole lot of good, right? We know it though. That's true. We do know it.
We know that F, D, and E all have to add up to be 180.
Mm-hmm. F, D, and E. Angle F. Angle D. And angle E all have to add up to 180, right? And we know that angle F is 2x minus 48. And we know that angle D is 48. And we know that angle E is 108. Right? Can we solve that? Yeah. So first thing that jumps out is me. Y'all see them two 48s there? One's a positive, one's a negative. What do? They cancel out, right? And so then we're left with 2x plus 108 equals 180. What do we do next? Subtract 108, right? Subtract 108. So then we've got 2x equals 72. And then what? Divide by 2. And x is 36. So that's our answer for number 3. X is 36. Okay, so that is the whole lesson for today. We're going to do the rest of this tomorrow. But let me show you some stuff about your practice page when you're filling in your practice page, okay? So this is what it looks like. Let me delete this stuff I already put in here. Okay, so on 1 and 2, same way that we were doing on our skills practice side, you have to list all the congruent parts and then you have to make a congruent statement. Okay? Now, when you're typing angles in, you have to use the angle symbol, and it's right over here at the end. So we're going to type the angle symbol. And, I'm going to show you. That's why I'm showing you this. I want to show you how to put the congruent. I just figured it out today. And I figured it out like I guessed it. And I was right. No, it's not a copy and paste. It's easier. Okay, so angle A, right? Now, here's how you type congruent. Let me make this bigger so y'all can see it better. Okay, so you're going to type the backslash, and then in lowercase letters C-O-N-G, and then hit space, and it puts the congruency symbol in there. Huh? Well, if that's what you want to do, I'm okay with that. I just think it's easier just to type it. And then we're going to do angle, what is it congruent to, y'all? What's angle A congruent to? D, right? They're not in the same place on this page. Now, what I would do is after I typed it one time, I would Control C to copy that. And then I would paste it in the next one and then just change my letters. That's what I would do. So you're not having to type it all over again, right? So, and then you're going to have 3 of those because you have 3 sets of angles. Okay? So then I would do 3 of them and just change the letters, right? And then when you get ready to do your segments, so like we don't have a segment symbol. I've tried and cannot figure out how to make it do a segment symbol over the thing. So we would just do like AB, and then we would do backslash CONG to get our congruent symbol, or copy and paste it, okay? And then what is AB congruent to? DR. So we would put DR, right? And then I would copy and paste that one and just change the things. Now, over here, you're going to do your triangle congruent statement, right? So you need a little triangle symbol. Backslash, Triangle space, get you a triangle symbol. Now I'm going to put a random congruent statement in there. So triangle LJM is congruent to triangle GFM. That's mine and my husband's initials. That was the easiest way I could think of doing it. So that's how you type it in, okay? So you will do that for these. Remember to go from this triangle to that triangle. And when you're doing your segments, do it alphabetically. And when you do your angle, your triangle, do it alphabetically, the first one. But then match the second one to it. The second one doesn't necessarily be alphabetical. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Okay. All right. I think you are good. Y'all have about 15 minutes, about what I said you would have. So you have 15 minutes to work on 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? If you don't finish them, that's okay. But you have that time to work on them. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You sure can. I need you to hold his hand.